Hello, everyone. My name is John Watts. I'm the Managing Director at the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement in the United States, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's International Knowledge Exchange. The exchange is a true collaboration between CIMM, EGTA, the WFA, IAB Europe, and EACA, focused on promoting dialogue and discussion about media and advertising, measurement and currency, data, and the use of new metrics across the advertising ecosystem. It's an incredibly important initiative in our view. Collaboration is very core to our DNA at CIMM, so we're delighted to be part of this august group. We live in interesting times with huge changes and shifts underway across the industries. The goal of the exchange is really to promote understanding and dialogue, to explore common touch points and different perspectives across the buy side and the sell side, TV and digital, Europe and the USA. We do genuinely believe that these exchanges can play a meaningful role in bringing the industry together. To that end, we have an amazing lineup of sessions today, including deep dives into the new Advertising Who Cares initiative, an exploration of recent developments at Google in the age of AI and retail media. And then lastly, the trade bodies represented here have come together and we each have put together a set of predictions for 2025, which should be a nice way to round out the session today. We do have a lot to get through. We have a packed schedule, but please do feel free to post any questions during the course of the discussion, and we'll do our best to get to them either during the individual sessions or at the end. To kick us off, I'm really delighted to welcome Tom Ashby of the WFA, who's going to lead discussion about the fast-growing retail media landscape. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, John, and good to see so many people today. We've got a few bits to talk about within retail media, specifically on the evolving retail media landscape and some work that the IAB Europe have been doing to start to do a bit more to help with the existing Wild West, as it's been called. As an introduction, I am Tom Ashby. I am the Global Lead for Media Services here at WFA, representing the buy side. I'm really happy to welcome Anna and Marie-Clare. Anna, over to you first.
Hi, thank you, Tom. Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Anna, and I'm the retail media lead for Benelux from Unilever side.
Thanks, Anna. Marie-Clare, I think.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. My name is Marie-Clare. I'm the Industry Development and Insights Director here at IAB Europe. And a primary part of my role for the last couple of years has been developing and leading our retail media work track, including the standardization, which we are going to touch upon today.
Exactly. Well, thank you both. Indeed, and I wanted to share a few of the challenges that we're talking about. And I think everyone on this call has heard many times all the different problems in various countries and around the world. I'm going to bring out three on the left-hand side here, which have come through consistently in the work that we've done with our Retail Media Task Force this year and ongoing discussions. And of course, this does not apply equally to everyone. This does not apply equally to everywhere in the world. But some of these do seem to be remarkably common. Number one, lack of transparency and lack of standardization. Number two, fragmentation in the market and a real disparity of capabilities between some of the sell side. And number three, a gap in knowledge, a gap in expertise within each of the buy sides and sell sides within the markets and going across more widely. Now, these are, I've presented these as separate points. In reality, these are all, of course, crossover. Real lack of the fact that transparency is not where it should be for a $150 billion industry is the real challenge on this. The lack of standardization that we see and that you'll be talking about in a moment, Marie-Clare, is of course related to that market fragmentation. And in itself, a disparity of capabilities is not a bad thing. We're talking about a dynamic market, and the very best in the market should be bringing up everyone else. So of course, there's going to be that disparity. The problem is if the best provider, if the practices established there are not feeding down to the others, and that's where I feel some of the work that you talk about can really help with. Anna, I know we haven't captured your particular challenges in this slide, but maybe you can talk a little bit around the challenges that you experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Sounds familiar. So I think for me, it's a bit of a deeper level on transparency, and I think mainly 3 key points for me here are very important. So first is the real-time data passback, so transparency of the data. The more and the better insights that we get, the easier it is also to prove the value. Secondly, I think third-party verification, that's really an important one for us. For example, within traditional media, this is already the standard. So this is also what we're really looking forward to and really want to establish going forward in 2025. And then thirdly, also this dissociation from sell-in, being able to make decision based on media performance and not based on trade terms that there already are. So I think that are the 3 main challenges we see now within the retail media landscape.
Thank you. Marie-Clare, to you.
Thank
Your
you,
thoughts?
Tom and Anna. Yeah, I think, you know, we hear those challenges as well day to day in our working group and our committee. I think just to say there's a real willingness on the sales side as well to make this work, and I just want to touch on some of the challenges that the sales side are, you know, face kind of in addressing those. So one, when a retailer is building out a retail media network, you know, the kind of operational setup is a hurdle that they've got to overcome. They've got to implement, you know, how they use their data partnerships, measurement, etc. And that's all quite a big undertaking. The second thing, which is probably actually should be the first, but the second thing is the actual internal structure and how they actually create a media network within a retailer is a real it sounds quite straightforward, but actually it's quite a challenge. You know, you've got to get that internal buy-in, you've got to bring people along on a journey, you've got to get the right investment signed off, you've got to get the right skills in place. And then that leads on to the third point, which is really understanding the right technology that's needed and the technology and what it can do for your business and how to implement it. They're all, you know, much like Tom said with his challenge, the buy-side challenges, they're all interlinked, but they are real challenges that the sell side are kind of grappling with on a day-to-day basis to really, you know, build out themselves as professional media businesses.
And so the project that you guys have been working on and is now open for everyone. You want to talk a little bit around that? Okay.
Yes. So aside from all of the other things that the retailers have got going on, we've given them some standards work to work on as well. Because as Tom said, I think one of the core barriers to entry and to investment in this industry is the lack of standardization and that fragmentation. And so what we did was in January, we brought together 15 retailers and retail media networks into a 2-day workshop to really double down on the development of measurement standards for on and off site retail media. So anything kind of online, if you like. You can see the timeline here. I don't need to read it out to you, but essentially by April, you know, through various different consultations and public comment period, we have a V1 of the standards out in market as of April of this year. And then we're now looking towards certification, which I'll come on to in a moment. We've also done a similar process for in-store retail media because we see this as another really core component of the retail media landscape. It's actually where a lot of the growth is. Brands are looking there for, you know, building brands, etc. You know, some people are citing it as the new mass medium, not me personally, but you know, that's tends to be where lots of the excitement is coming from within retail media. So we thought, you know, to try and get ahead of the curve a bit with this, let's, you know, put together some definitions and some standards and some guidelines around how to do in-store retail media measurement. So we went on a similar process. We had a workshop in July, I think with about 14 or 15 retailers. And again, then we did buy and sell side workshops over the summer, and we published these for public comment in September. And by the end of this month, we're just going through all of the comments now. We will have a V1 of those in-store measurement standards for released by the end of this month. So they're kind of two core pieces of work we've done this year to address the lack of standardization and to hopefully bring a bit more transparency and harmonization to the market. Building further on that, the next thing we're looking at is certification. So the standards are there, they're in place. How do we make sure companies, businesses are adhering to those standards? We are going to do that via certification. So retailers and their retail media networks will be able to come to IAB Europe, use one of our 3 independent auditors, go through an audit process and verify that they adhere to the standards we've set out. And the idea of that is to bring more transparency and best practice to the market. So that is in beta phase now, with some test partners, and full launch will be early next year.
And there's the questions up here say, what do you think this will mean for the industry going forwards, this work?
So I've touched on a couple of these, but I think, 5 core things. Comparability across the retail media networks. One of the things we heard from the buy side earlier this year was, I don't know if a viewable impression on retail media network 1 is the same as a viewable impression on retail media network 2. So it will bring improved comparability. Standardized reporting. It will bring standardized reporting via, certification. As I said, hopefully increase transparency and with that accountability. We think, if it's more standardized and more professional, more investment will flow into retail media. And also, I think this is coming anyway, but along with the standardization work we're doing, the retail media networks will have more sophisticated offerings. To Anna's point, more improved data reporting, real-time data, etc. So hopefully all of those things in time.
And my second question up here, I mean, how can people lean in? I know you've been working a lot with the sales side, and of course with the real leading clients such as Anna and Unilever here today. But across the wider industry, what further engagement could be could we get to really drive this forwards?
So I think what I would like to see going forward, and to be fair, what I found quite refreshing about retail media over the last 12 months is actually the buy and the sell side do seem quite willing to work together. More of that would be really good. So, it's really useful to have people like Anna talking to us as the IAB. It's really useful for us to have, conversations with the media agencies as they build out their capabilities. And the retailers as well. The retailers are leaning in. We need them to continue to lean in, more of them to lean in and get involved and undertake the certification, become a professional organisation and do all of those things. So I would say those are the core things.
Thank you. And then
now I can see you both. It's nice. I have a question, Marie-Clare. So how is the engagement from the retailers been?
Really good. So as you can see from the slide before, we had 15 retailers participating in our initial workshop. That included also, by the way, Amazon, which I think is really useful. So the engagement's been really good. As I said, they are willing to go on this standardization journey. They're willing to address, the buy side challenges. They obviously, as I alluded to, have their own challenges and operational things to overcome. But the engagement has been good. We would love for more retailers to get involved with us, as we see, I think every week there's a new retail media network that seems to appear. As you're building out your retail media network, come and have a conversation with us, how we can support you, how we can help you on the standardization journey.
Yeah, and I think that maybe you're going to answer my question here, but we're going to have people here who are working at retailers who have been asked, hey, set up a retail media network. We want some of that $150 billion. You've got a week to do it. How can what would you say to this person? How can they incorporate standards from day one? And really, what is the first step they should make to get to this position?
So I think the first step I would say is have a look internally. Where are you on your journey? Are you at day 1, or are you potentially at day 6? You've done some work, but you haven't completed everything. I think if you're on day 1, you're in a really good position to implement standards. You can set up your measurement framework and your measurement reporting along, aligned to the standards straight away. Which I think, as we've alluded to, the buy side one, I think if you're further along the journey, you've perhaps got to kind of go back a bit and re-architect some of your infrastructure, which is absolutely fine, and have a look at the technology that you've got supporting you as well, because there's obviously some really, really good technology companies out there which can help support you along the journey. And also talk to your clients, talk to your brands, because no doubt you've already got a relationship with them, and find out what's, priority, what's their priority, and go from there. But I mean, my question back to you is, obviously, we've done a lot of this work. We continue on this journey of standardization and hopefully certifying companies. But does this go some way to addressing some of the transparency concerns? And what more, potentially would you like to see?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that on behalf of WFA and what I know from the buy side before Anna handing over to you for maybe something a little more personal with this. But really, standards work is very much welcomed. We talked about the challenges being the lack of transparency, the lack of standardization, and clearly working towards this is an important step. It's important to raise the floor so that it's something that's taking up people's time, people's headspace at the moment, when frankly, it's not really value adding to have all the many different formats and other challenges that you're seeking to address here. So yes, I think it will be, but the phrase is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's almost like the real work is getting this properly integrated into everyone's offering, so that everyone can then benefit. And what I don't think it's right that the buy side can just sit there and say this is up to the sell side to do. It's up to the sell side to give me all these standards. There needs to be, I think, pressure on all sides that we rally around this to say it's an appropriate route to take, and then let's make sure that that's in place for all. So to summarize, yes, it is. It will address the challenges, providing it can be rolled out as widely as possible. Anna, how does that match up with what you think?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So very happy to see these standards on your slide, Marie-Clare. I think we are running in the right direction. And also what Tom is saying, I think we need to work seamlessly together, all of the parties. I think that's the most important one. And that's also something we are really aiming for, to work with all the parties together. So backing up both of your points, and standards are needed. But it also needs to become real standards that everyone is using, instead of it still being definitions now. We all need to work accordingly to these standards. And also, when we are having these standards, we can also trust the data and rely on the data. But most importantly, we can also compare it to other results, which will cause in us making better decisions, and also investing more and keep on investing in retail media. And also only by doing that we can grow the business together. And I think that is really the next step we need to take together.
Absolutely. And we've had a question that's come in here to say, is this standardization across all markets, i.e. including the US, or is it Europe only?
So we have, for the on-site and off-site measurement standards, we've aligned as much as possible with the US. So some people may know the IAB in the US released measurement guidelines in January. So we've aligned as much as possible with them, but we feel gone quite a bit further in terms of standardizing the metrics, so and how measurement is done. So things like look back windows, we've been a bit stricter on. So that aligns with them. The in-store piece we've actually done, I failed to say actually, but I should say we've done in collaboration with the IAB in the US. So the in-store standards that we are, as I said, about to release at the end of the month, crosses both Europe and the US.
I hope that that answers the question. All right, well, I will say for that, thank you very much, and I thank you very much, Marie-Clare, for sharing this.
Sure.
Thank you for having me.
Is there a link that we can post for everyone to look at the standards? And
yes, we will share it in the chat box very shortly. I'll pop it over, and yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay, great. Well, Anne-Laure, I'm going to hand over to you now for the next session of today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks. On EACA side, what we wanted to do today is to invite two people who I think the UK industry know very well and that are being well known internationally as well. But we wanted to make sure that as many people as possible hear from them. Brian Jacobs and Nick Manning. Nick, I think you can turn your camera on as well. The idea is to have you guys share about advertising who cares. I'm going to start by sharing a few slides. Just under rule for this discussion, feel free to share questions in the Q&A box as well. I'll just share a few slides at the beginning and the end, but otherwise we want this to be a conversation. We'll share the slides afterwards. So again, I'm not really sure how much you two need to be introduced, really. But for those who might not know you, Nick has been the founder of Manning Gottlieb in the UK, and that is part of the Omnicom now, of the OMD group. Spent 10 years with Ubiquity. I think a lot of you might have seen Nick's name around that, and Nick is writing quite a lot as well in some of the trade press. And Brian, both in the UK and in the US, spent a lot of time on the media agency side at Leo Burnett, but at Carat, at Kantar, at it's a wealth of knowledge that that we have together by having both of you here. And you want to share with us an initiative that you have called Advertising Who Cares. So can I let you tell us a little bit what this is and why we should care?
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody, and thank you very much, Anne-Laure, and thank you to egta and everybody else for inviting us both to this. You're looking at a very smart first slide with nice pictures of me and Nick, and also a nice picture of a coffee shop. That's a coffee shop in southwest London in Putney, which is where we met. Nick and I live quite near each other. We've both been doing this media stuff for quite a long time. We've known each other for a long time, and every so often we meet up for coffee. And normally, this is sort of two old guys putting the world to rights and moaning about life in general. And on this occasion, we were having a chat about the whole issue of transparency and ad fraud and principle-based media, which neither of us are very keen on, and the sort of measurement model we seem to have got into with different definitions, or definitions meaning different things depending on where you're looking at them from, and all sorts of other issues as well. And in the middle of all this, we said, and also, by the way, the ads aren't terribly good at the moment either, are they, actually, when you think about it? And so we decided that maybe this was just us and we were just old and, who really cares? And so we thought we'll see whether or not other people shared our point of view. And so we put out a blog, in that blog we said something about, we're going to put on an event. We didn't quite know what we meant by that, actually, to be quite fair. We thought it could be an event in my house or Nick's house around the kitchen table, or it could be at a boardroom somewhere, or it could be at a venue. And we said, if there's enough interest, we'll put something on. Anyway, before we knew it, we had a lot of supporters and people urging us to get on with it. And so in September, as that slide shows, September the 12th, we put on an event at the RSA, Royal Society of Arts in London. And we invited some very eminent speakers. And we also set up 5 work streams, about which more perhaps in a minute, but we had leaders of each work stream. These were the sort of 5 topics that we thought, I suppose, encapsulated some of the concerns we had. There were business models, there was the whole issue of trading, trust and transparency, there was measurement and accountability, there was lots and lots of different things. One of the speakers at that launch event was Lucy Jameson. Lucy Jameson founded an agency called Uncommon, and this was one of her slides. And this really did seem, it's actually a quote from Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman. And this really did seem to sum up that there's no point in just looking backwards all the time. We wanted to look forwards, as you'll hear in a few minutes. We didn't want to sort of just keep going on about what happened in the past, because the woods are burning, as Arthur Miller wrote. There's a big blaze going on all around. We need to do something about it. So that then led us into, so well, what do we care? What do we care about? What do we think about? What are the major issues as we see them? And we sort of thought, well, we really want there to be great advertising that drives business success. And that implies, of course, we need to measure it. We need to know when we've got it, when we've got there. So we need to measure business success in some way. We need advertising that engages and informs the audience. We need advertising that treats people with respect, both in terms of their time, respecting their privacy, their space, and so on. We want advertising to be relevant and well-targeted and well-measured, as opposed to at the moment where it seems to be not particularly well-targeted and very poorly measured. We want advertising that funds great content. We've heard a lot about all kinds of brilliant media forms, which are really about, at the end of the day, delivering an audience. And there's no real content involved per se. And there used to be this wonderful sort of symbiosis between advertising revenues and delivering, great entertaining content. And we thought that was very important. We're not saying advertisers should be sort of philanthropic, but at least before you go into these things, think a little bit about the effect on society, if you like, of great journalism and great entertainment. We wanted the advertising to be well curated and organized. We wanted it to be sustainable economically and also in the true sense of sustainable. We wanted to be efficient, and we'd found rather it didn't really fund fraud and crime. So that was what we sort of started off.
What sort of people answered your call initially, right? So when Nick wrote, and then both of you wrote this article, this is what we think is wrong with our industry right now. Have we lost sight of what our industry is supposed to do initially? Why is transparency not at the core of what we do? Why is the quality experience of the viewers not more at the core of what we do? What sort of, what side of the industry is answering the most to this? Like, who did you have the most at that event on the 12th of September? Who are you a bit frustrated that you didn't see enough, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, first of all, we didn't, one or two criticisms of us, one criticism of us was we didn't invite certain people to attend the event on September the 12th. We didn't actually invite anybody to September the 12th. We just put tickets on sale and people came or they didn't.
And for profit, just to clarify the tickets, right? It was just to fund the event, right?
Yeah, there was no, I mean, the idea was that we would basically take, I mean, we didn't know about organizing events, we don't do that kind of thing. We thought what we'll do is we'll work out the cost of the venue, catering and everything else. We'll divide that by the number of people we think we'll underwrite it. So it won't, if no one comes, we'll be out of pocket. And if we make a profit or, we cover our costs to make some kind of surplus, we'll give that to charity. And that's what we did. We gave it to the advertising charity NABS. So that was in terms of who we got is a good question, that, because first of all, we're now up to about 500 supporters. And obviously, we didn't have 500 supporters in September. We've now got about 500. I think in September, we had about 350, 400, something like that. A lot of people wanted to join us anonymously. So we had people joining from companies which haven't themselves been particularly supportive of us or indeed engaged us in any way. But individuals have. So classically, some of the big advertising agency holding companies, we had individuals joining from there, but not, they wanted us to use their private email addresses. They didn't want their names to be known and so on. We also had a lot of people from consultancies, from trade bodies. We had EGTA as a very good example. We had people from the Advertisers Association. We had quite a few advertisers show up on the day. And we had quite a lot of independent agencies. Who did we not get? We didn't get the platforms. They could obviously we would have been delighted if they'd come, but none of them, I don't think any of them did, as far as I'm aware. We have got people from the platforms in our supporter group, but none of them showed up. We would have liked to have had more advertisers. I think we had about 10 or something like that from advertisers at the event. We've had more since joining us. And we probably, if we're being really critical of ourselves, didn't do enough to attract younger people. I mean, we didn't go out of our way to attract anyone. Like I said, we just put it up there, rented up the flagpole, as they say, and see who salutes. We didn't know what was going to happen. So that's what we did. It's
really surprising to me that that not everyone would feel like this is their joint responsibility to make our industry better, which is of interest for all of us, right? Why is it you think, maybe Nick, I don't know if you want to answer to that, but why is it you think some people don't want to join at company level? I mean, from an advertiser perspective, I feel it's very in right now, and it's very much in, you know, with our time to say that you want to be part of responsible advertising. You want to make an advertising that is also changing the world, is making the world better. Obviously, you would want, you know, to care to your title. Is it less so the case of media agencies that are, you know, I mean, bottom line, we all know we're about profit, but still, that's not what you want to say. Why are they not joining with the name of the company? Why do they have to hide by, you know, with their Gmail address? And why do we not see more platforms?
Well, I think the answer is that, first of all, there are commercial sensitivities, because some people might have seen that what we were doing was in some way critical of certain bodies, which it wasn't, by the way. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But also, frankly, there was a lot of interest in what we were doing, but people worried about the long-term sustainability of it. Is this just a bit of a one-off? Does it have legitimacy? You know, what exactly is this thing? And I think until people actually sampled it live and saw what it actually meant on September the 12th, that was a point at which I think the penny dropped and people realized this is something that was worth supporting. And since then, we've done a lot of evangelizing, if you like, of it. And we've had a lot of interest from very many places across the world, from different companies and businesses, individuals, coming to us and saying, yes, I want to be part of this. You've got to remember that this is a grassroots movement. It's independent, it's voluntary, it's impartial. And people need to understand that before they get involved, really, because it may not have appeared that way to some people. And I think they were interested to see what it was like and what we were doing. Ever since it became more obvious about what we were doing, then I think there's been a lot more interest. And I think the other question they had, as I said just now, is what is actually going to happen as a result of any of this? And what's the most important part, really, isn't so much the launch event itself, which we got very, very good feedback to, but it's what we're doing later, afterwards, over the next months to come, is the most important part of it. And we'll come on and talk about that in a minute, really. But you know, we've reached a point now where we've got a lot of people supporting us. We've got a lot of people saying they believe in what we're trying to achieve. We've got the support of a number of trade bodies, including EGTA and others. And so the question now really is, what is our path to success? How are we going to go about pushing this forward? And what are we going to be doing to make all this happen?
Yeah, what is it that you need to make it happen? I mean, I've put up here the slide, what's next? What sort of things do you need from the industry, from people that would commit, right? I mean, first, do you need them to come? If it's difficult for them to share their name, is it fine to have some insider knowledge from people who actually want to just contribute by explaining where they see the friction happening, and what sort of commitment, support are you looking for?
Well, the key point is that we're looking for solutions, we're looking for ideas, techniques and technologies, and we don't really mind where they come from. As I said, we are independent, we are platform neutral, if you like, we're impartial. And what we're going to do is we're going to act as a central point of aggregation for what we believe to be the best thinking in the industry across as many of the pillars of the industry that there are. One of the key things that came out of the September 12th event is the interconnectedness of all of these issues across the whole piece. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the main thing is we welcome the contribution of anybody who cares, anybody who's got an interesting point of view or an idea to share, and that can be companies of any kinds. It can be agencies, it can be media owners, it can be ad tech companies, individuals. A lot of people are coming forward and saying, I'm approaching you in an individual capacity. Obviously, trade bodies. We have 5 trade bodies on this call today, which we believe should be interested in sharing our motivation. and also a variety of special interest groups like the Conscious Advertising Network and others. So we're looking to bring together in a central point an aggregation of all of the best thinking in the industry across our key areas. And we're working to some basic principles on this. We want to put the consumer at the center of it all, because we believe that that public exposure to advertising is critical. We know that the way that advertising is being seen and heard by people these days has caused a loss of interest and trust in advertising. We have the data that tells us that. We also know that people's experience of advertising is putting them off coming into the advertising industry. We had a very interesting presentation from Crispin Reed, who talked about his research amongst young folk, who said, "Why would we want to go into an industry that bombards us with crap all day long?" And that's a quote. We want it to be advertiser-led, because in the end, advertising has to lead to success for advertisers, although we are very keen on how advertising funds media. We are very interested in the generation of effectiveness and impact in particular, because we've seen a loss of effectiveness and impact in the advertising industry over the last 15 or so years, for reasons that I think we all know about, but we can spell out if needs be. We believe in a high degree of responsibility towards the public, towards society, and towards the environment. But we also believe very heavily in human relationships. We think this industry stands or falls on the quality of its relationships. We see quite a lot of tension in some of those right now. And with artificial intelligence of various kinds playing such a big role now, we need to make sure that we put human values first and tools and techniques second. That's, if you like, the approach.
I mean, when I hear you speak, I can only imagine that younger practitioners, younger people in our industry would actually be fascinated by that, because this is exactly what they usually bring to the table. And we see sometimes internally to some of the companies this sort of value clash, where the younger generation comes with a sort, I want to save the world, I want to make this a better world vision, and this industry is, not allowing me to do it. Therefore, I want to move somewhere else, I want to move for a brand that cares more, and so on. So I can only imagine that they would actually care about this Who Cares initiative. So I really urge all of you who have people, in their companies to be that are, passionate about the topic, to maybe join that and to make it happen. I think, Brian, you're right. It's maybe one of the downsides of the very first event, that was much more into people who had more responsibility in their jobs, therefore felt also like they have the the independence to decide they can join that sort of event. I think we need to bring in the younger generations in. I don't know if you see that happening already.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the original event was a launch event. We did make a big point of this over and over again. It was a launch. It wasn't like the culmination of lots and lots of stuff. It was the launch event. And we wanted to sort of make the point that if we want to get to a stage where advertising regains its mojo, if you like, regains the sort of the importance of craft skills, actually having people on stage who had done that before wasn't a bad place to sort of start. But it's a perfectly fair point that we want to attract. You're quite right. We do want to attract sort of younger practitioners, young professionals, and we're delighted whenever people join us from that group. Anything that anyone can do to spread the word, to get younger people involved, it'd be absolutely great. We have had some very nice comments from people who are, I suppose, more representative of people who are certainly a lot younger than me, and even younger than Nick, which it's hard to imagine. We are getting there, and I think now is the stage to sort of build it out and to start to go on the front foot a bit. We've been very much, here we are, here's what we're going to try and do, come and join us, and people have. And I think now we need to go and say, hey, these are really important issues, you should contribute to it. It's go a bit more on the offensive.
We have a question in the chat box. I come to that in a minute, but just on that topic of, who is driving the change, I still wanted to play a bit devil's advocate here as well, because as I hear you say, we need the younger generation in, and I agree. At the same time, if we really want change to happen, wouldn't you say we need the top management to get involved? I mean, the C-suite executives are those that make it happen. And if I'm being, again, also a little bit self-critical, the problem with the C-suite is that they still report to the board. They still report to people who, you know, want the bottom line to be beneficial. In the end, who do we need involved to drive change, really? If we want the board or the investors, on, you know, that's the people who are going to help us change our industry as well. No, how do we do that? Have you looked into it?
Let me answer that, because I mean it is a critical question, and we've been asked this question a lot. In fact, we asked ourselves this question even before we started, which is, where is this all leading and how is it going to have an effect? And the reason that we're looking at these building blocks that we should talk through a little bit now, actually, is to say we need to, if you like, describe to the world at large what great advertising looks like and why it looks like what it does. And so the impetus behind our next phase really is to say, if we can actually generate the best thinking, the best ideas, the best solutions in these 8 building blocks and put them all together in one place, then it's down to the industry to decide whether they want to use them or not. And also, frankly, academia too, because if we can start to talk about these things in, you know, academies and in schools and universities and colleges, then we will attract the next generation of talent into our industry. So let me just talk through these a little bit more so that people get a real sense of what we're trying to do here. And the most important thing is that we are looking at this independently and impartially. This is not towards a specific agenda. We're not being paid by anybody. There's no incentives for us. Everything is voluntary. But it's built around a belief that we can do better as an industry. And it's rooted in truth and realism. And the area we need to be most truthful about is the business models that underlie the industry. So Michael Farmer, who's leading that work stream for us, did a fantastic presentation at our launch event about the business behaviours that underpin the industry as it is. So we're going to be looking at that afresh. We're going to be looking at the incentives that drive advertisers, the way that agencies work. We're going to be looking at the ad tech, publisher, broadcasting industry and saying, right, let's really understand the workings of this business so that we can start to work out better ways of doing things than we currently have. Because unless we understand all of the parts of the clock, we can't tell the time, you see what I mean? So that's critical to all of this. We're also going to be looking at, and we're going to put creativity at the start of this as well, really, because advertising needs to cut through. It needs to reach hearts and minds, not just eyeballs. We need creativity that really moves the needle. So if we're talking about influencing the C-suite, the way to do that is to demonstrate that advertising really does shift that needle. It really can make a difference, and the quality of creativity can be a key business driver. So that's really, really crucial to this. And I think that addresses your point, Anne-Laure, about what will make people move. Ultimately, success makes people move. So creative is a key part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big puzzle, our industry. I guess that's what's hard as well, right? To move the pieces, is that there are so many different layers, so many different players in the value chain, and until all the pieces come together, it's really complicated. But we need everyone to play their role, I guess, in their individual puzzle pieces, and not to point fingers saying, it's them. I always like this image of when you point a finger, 3 fingers are pointing back to you, right? So
exactly. I think that the Nick mentioned it before, but one of the things that really did come out of the event in September was how connected these things all are.
Yeah.
If you don't get the business models right, then you're going to put the agencies in a position they're not making enough money. They've got to make money somehow. They've got shareholders like everybody else. They need to find other ways of doing it, and therefore they do what they do. That tends to lead to a lack of transparency, a lack of trust, which leads to all sorts of other evil things, as it were. It leads to a diminution in media planning. It leads to all kinds of problems with measurement and accountability and analytics, which are not properly sort of used. And you get to the point almost where people are much more interested, frankly, in counting how many people were in front of a screen or how many people were exposed to an ad than what the ad is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We used to be much more concerned about what the ad is saying and then worry about the audience. Now we're much more concerned about the audience.
On that point, one of the key points in the measurement and accountability part of the day was to talk about, let's stop measuring devices and measure people. Let's stop measuring impressions which may or may not be real. We need to go back to basics here, and we need to understand what is the best thinking in all of the areas on this page. And there's nothing really that we're leaving out. I mean, there's a danger of boiling the ocean, but actually, all of these things are important. They're all interconnected. And what we're going to do now is go to the industry and say, right, you help us. You tell us what you think the best way to do these things is. We will pull it all together and we will publish our findings once we've done all of that. And it's huge, but it can only work if we have the support of the industry behind us and people who really care about advertising helping us do it. So we are actively in the market for the first time now to say, right, this is your opportunity to help make for a better future for the advertising industry.
And actually, we have 5 minutes left. I take that question because also it comes from Howard, who is absolutely just like the two of you, a legend on the American TV landscape. And so Howard was asking, how do you overcome the fact that in some instances, better advertising outcomes may cost agencies or media companies more to execute, for example, the data, the fees, the ad taxes of advanced advertising. But I mean, I guess that's part of the question. And Howard, yeah, welcome to join the discussion, to give in your input as well.
I mean, the answer. I mean, it's a very good question and a very fair question as well, but I mean, the answer does lie in the business model argument. At the moment, we're just simply charging people, for almost like the hours spent, almost, not anything else, not anything to do with outputs or anything to do with success or any of those things. Now, I do appreciate that obviously measuring outcomes or measuring success, those are easy things to say and very difficult things to do. But if you listen to Michael, Nick mentioned Michael Farmer, if you listen to Michael on this, there are loads of ways of doing this, but you just need to take the first step. You need to take the first step. I mean, I've been in the industry one hell of a long time. I believe you me, back in the 1970s, people were moaning about the business model.
When are we not moaning?
Yeah, it's always, why aren't we being paid the same as consultants, and all that.
I mean, we've got used to the idea that advertising can be three things: fast, cheap, and good. And that isn't necessarily the case. And we need to get into a model where people understand that good advertising does cost more, it takes more effort, it takes more brain power, and therefore it's worth paying for because it returns a better business result back to the client. So we've got to get out of this doom loop, if you like, of low cost impressions and get into real analytics of business success, ROI, outcomes, however you want to describe it. I think we're heading that way already. The industry is talking about it an awful lot more, but that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And Lord, if I could just say, I mean, to anybody listening or watching this, if you go onto our website, we've got all of the presentations from the September the 12th event. They're all there. They're all free. You can watch them. You can download the decks. You can do whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm, an old ad man, so I would say go and watch the Lucy Jameson one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael Farmer's presentation as well is great on explaining where that pressure is, because the entire industry is under pressure. The problem is where can we remove some of that pressure? That's a very difficult question, I find, but he analyzed that as well very well. So yeah, thank you for that. And I'd like to say as well, I mean, having been involved in the GARM discussions, I don't see how anyone who was involved in GARM, the responsible media side, would not want to be part of this. We're all in this industry because of a passion. It's a people's business, and it's a people's business amongst us, but also because we're working for people that we want to serve better, and for brands, obviously, that we want as well to grow in a very responsible and healthy way. I don't see how anyone would not want to be involved in that. So I'm guessing at this stage, it's just a lack of not knowing what this is, where it's going, what is expected. So indeed, just taking that to an end, I don't know if you have any closing remarks, but yeah.
It's a very fair point that Nick made earlier. Why would people at the beginning support this when they had no idea what it was? I mean, Christ, we didn't know what it was, so why would anyone else know what it was? And we're now getting to the stage of saying, oh, okay, we've done the launch. We've laid out the stall, as it were. Now we're going to put some, we're going to actually make sure people understand what it is we're trying to do. We need help. We need everybody to involve themselves. This is your chance, in a way, to kind of get involved and have your say in how the industry works in the future and how it can work better. I don't understand why people wouldn't want to do that. I just, it passes me by, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, a lack of time is probably an answer, right? I mean, this pressure is real. All of us are under pressure, but if we want to be passionate about what we do, I think we need to put a bit of energy out there to press pause and make this, better industry even more so.
We've had brilliant leaders throughout, and these people like Jenny Bigham, some of you know from 7 Stars. I mean, these people are pretty busy, and everybody we've asked to lead a work stream or to speak at our event, everybody has said yes. No one has turned us down yet. I mean, maybe they will tomorrow, but no one's turned us down yet. So yes, everyone's really, really busy, but I think if we all do a little bit, then we can make a very big progress.
Absolutely. They leading by example, and that's good that they're doing it. So this is a call to action for this movement to be even more global, for this movement to be more representative of our industry throughout the value chain, and also throughout all age groups. So I hope that this was doing it. With that, thank you so much, Brian and Nick. Handing over to John for a discussion that is very much linked as well. What is happening with Google? What's this big giants doing right now? What's the future? So John, I let you take over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne-Laure, Nick and Brian, for that important and stimulating discussion. I learned a lot. I'm delighted to say as well, brief plug, we're going to be hosting Nick and Brian at CIMM London on Monday, December 9th to continue this important debate. I'm now really delighted to have the opportunity to moderate a discussion about what's happening at Google. So as everybody here knows, obviously, Google is one of the largest and most important businesses in the advertising ecosystem. It provides a truly wide portfolio of solutions and services, touching almost the entire media and advertising industry. And it's a solution set that keeps evolving. It can be genuinely hard to keep it up. So when we were programming this edition of the International Knowledge Exchange, we thought it would be a great moment to deep dive into some of what's happening with Google and what it means for marketeers. So I'm really delighted to welcome 2 great marketeers to the stage. David Towers, Senior Partner at Wavemaker, and Phil Acton, UK Country Manager at Adform. David, Phil, welcome to the International Knowledge Exchange. We're delighted to have you both.
Thank you.
Let's dive straight in. David, remind us, why is Google such an important, critical player in the advertising ecosystem?
Well, I suppose the easiest way is just to throw out some of the brands that they have within the space, right? Chrome, Android, YouTube, DoubleClick, Google Ads, Google Analytics. I mean, I think it's something like 30% of all global ad spend goes through Google. So 90% market share in search, 70% of mobile devices powered by Android, 62% market share for Google Chrome. I mean, Google is absolutely critical,
It is incredible. I think that those numbers do a great job of illustrating just how wide-ranging that portfolio is, and also how widely deployed and used it is by consumers, marketeers, advertisers, and by businesses that operate in the space themselves. Google's a huge provider of technology as well, of course. Phil, what's your take?
Yeah, I think, look, there's no doubt that Google has been an important player in the ecosystem and helping to build out the online advertising ecosystem as we know it. But I think because of the size that it has become, I think it's almost become beholden to be able to make people held hostage by this kind of the various events that it seems to be embroiled in when you wake up every morning and read the news. So we have this will they, won't they sort of flip-flopping of the cookies and them deprecating the cookies and then reversing that. You have the ongoing challenges with their sort of approach to the replacement of the cookies, which was Privacy Sandbox. And then we have these huge amount of, ongoing trials that's happening, seems to be happening in every market and every court in the land. So we have, the 2 main ones that are happening is this search one where they were deemed to be running a monopoly by making exclusive deals with device makers like Apple and Samsung, which meant, of course, then that Chrome was the default search engine on their devices. We also have the fascinating one, which is the ongoing one with the DOJ, whereby Google is being accused by various acquisitions of now controlling the supply and demand sides of online advertising. And I think when you get into the detail of that, and I spent some time doing research of that and reading the notes that sort of Ari Paparo had kindly posted on LinkedIn, there was just some really fascinating things when you scratch under the surface of what it was that Google were trying to do to control the marketplace, and I guess really ensure that pre-bid didn't really get a foothold with the publishers that they were working for. So, you know, there's some fascinating elements that were called out with that. There was some fascinating bits of technology that they built themselves, like Project Poirot, which had this effect of moving a lot of auctions off of external exchanges onto AdX. And I think it goes even further than that, because I mean, I've been in this industry since 2003. I started out back in paid search, and I remember in those early days from sort of 2006, 2007 onwards, you really had four main PPC bid management platforms. You had Marin, you had Kenshu, you had Efficient Frontier, and then you had DoubleClick that was bought by Google. And over time, all of the others except for DoubleClick really began to struggle to gain or to keep market share, because essentially Google was offering such low rates with the major holding groups and the large brands that it was practically, you know, below 1% and almost giving it away. And the reason, of course, that they could do that is because they had all of this money coming through the Google ad dollars. So it was, I guess, another example of where they're trying to create a sort of monopoly and ensure that some of the independent ad tech vendors or independent publishers really missed out because of that. So, you know, I think my view is a little bit different to David's. You know, I'm a bit, I feel like they have a little bit of a sob story at the moment, that they don't deserve this level of scrutiny. And recently read this blog post where they were crying about any enforced breakup of Google would hurt consumers and businesses. I mean, yeah, come on. I mean, I think when you look at how many allegations there are against them and the fact that they are being accused of this level of monopoly, I think it's only fair that the industry, you know, recognizes that they, of course, have had a hand in developing the online advertising industry as we know it, but we need to move out of a Google-dominated world and sort of forget all of this daily drama and really push on. You know, as our previous panel said, talk about transparency in advertising and building back some of that trust in advertising.
And just to counter one point there, Phil. I mean, and specifically on the bid management side, and I think part of Google's challenge is they do build very good products. You know, DoubleClick or or Search Ads 360 as it is now, it does deliver very well. And I think, you know, I sympathize with Google's pushback in some cases where they're being punished essentially for having the best product in the marketplace that consumers or advertising agencies are choosing to use. And so there is this tension that exists around, are Google being punished for having the best, best products in the marketplace? So I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think that's a valid side of the argument, and I do get that. But as someone who worked in agencies in the early noughties and used DoubleClick before it became Google, but also I had experience of working with Marin at an agency. I joined Efficient Frontier before they got acquired by Adobe. There was also some very good other platforms out there that I don't think there was a huge differentiator. Perhaps maybe when Google acquired DoubleClick and started to try and integrate it with Google Analytics, for instance. But I think it was always a case of us being able to struggle to compete with commercially because of the fact that they would ensure that they had those better commercial arrangements with the larger brands or agencies, as I said, that we were speaking to. And
the integration, right, is such an important point. Part of the reason why their Search Ads 360 product is so good now and their DoubleClick product is because of their ability to integrate across the ecosystem that they have control over. And there's no, I think that's both a positive and arguably, a point, a negative point that they can be accused of using that position to control the market.
But I think what's interesting about where we are at the moment, of course, is that competition remains pretty intense in the market, and there are some interesting things that we'll talk about in a moment, like AI and retail media, which potentially have significant implications for the market. Let's talk a little bit about cookies and the privacy sandbox. So I think everyone in the audience will be forgiven for being slightly confused about where this debate has got to. It feels like we've been talking about cookie deprecation for at least 3 years, and the debate still rages on. Phil, tell us where we've got to. What stage have we reached in this kind of ongoing saga?
Yeah, I think I sympathise with the audience being a little confused, because I think even those of us that are very close to the coalface on it are also a little bit confused. It's a bit messy, to say the least. After about 3 years of Google deciding that they were going to fall in line with the other major browsers and deprecate the third-party cookies, and after 3 years of testing different iterations, and their approach to it was this product called Google Privacy Sandbox. So in July, they decided that actually they weren't going to scrap the cookies after all. They were going to make some different changes. They were going to adopt a consent-based model, which would give users more control. I think probably similar to what Apple was pushing and rolling out as well. But I think that it was probably a lot to do with the fact that feedback from various tech vendors, including ourselves, that were asked to test it over the many years, that it just had lots of product gaps when it came to trying to find a single replacement solution for advertising as we know it today. So I think that in that instance, it was a real. I guess it was a real kind of kick in the teeth for some people that we'd been spending 2 or 3 years going down this route with Google, and then all of a sudden they pulled the rug. But you could also look at it as they did us a favor, right? So in the meantime, the rest of the industry have spent that 2 or 3 years looking at alternative solutions. There's contextual partners that we can talk about. There's first-party IDs, which is one that Adform in particular really focuses on. So it hasn't all been a complete waste of time, although it's been a frustrating amount of development time and so on. But there are some opportunities there to come out of it as an industry, I think, in a cleaner way by not focusing on third-party cookies.
And I guess the challenge, in a sense, is that this is a very interconnected ecosystem. So if you're a critical technology provider, you change one thing and it ripples the whole way down the ecosystem. David, what's your take on where we've got to? Obviously, you are one of you're a world-class expert on search advertising at WPP. How has this debate changed your thinking? Where has it got to in your mind?
On Privacy Sandbox specifically?
Yes, exactly. On the cookie deprecation Privacy Sandbox issues.
I mean, I think it links in actually with what Brian talked about before. Consumers are asking for more privacy. I think Google Chrome have been pressured, in terms of regulators and consumers to offer that privacy. So I think we all know there's going to be less cookies, but not necessarily full deprecation. It really depends on the user choice mechanism that Chrome rolls out. So to what extent those cookies will fall down. I think interestingly though, already, as Phil mentioned, the majority of the ad inventory is cookieless, and so we just, it's just pushing further down that space. I think we've done a number of Privacy Sandbox tests across some of our largest clients within GroupM, and actually in terms of targeting, we've got quite positive results. I think on the attribution and measurement side, there's quite a lot more work to be done collectively to make sure that is performing well. But I think broadly, actually, this whole move is positive, both for the industry and to give a slight different perspective. I do think Google is in a tricky position. They've got this 61% or 62% market share of Chrome, and they've got this balancing act to do of wanting to pivot away from cookies, but not wanting to control the market completely. And so I think giving advertisers and agencies and tech companies more time to test the Privacy Sandbox and make sure it's as robust as possible is a positive thing. But I completely agree that it's important for clients to be pushing more around first-party data, to be doing as much as possible with contextual, and that very much seems to be the direction that things are going down in.
And briefly, how do you expect to see this playing out during the course of the next 12 to 18 months? Should we start with you, David, and then come to Phil?
I think within H1, we'll start to see quite a significant reduction in cookies through Chrome, depending on how they roll out that user choice mechanism. And I think that we'll see the majority of the tech suppliers embracing Privacy Sandbox APIs and that becoming a more consistent way of running targeting in display campaigns. I think that's the way that it'll go.
Phil, what's your take?
Yeah, so as I said previously, our focus has been more on going down the first-party identity route. I think going back to David's point about browser market share, and I've no doubt that it is as high as that with Chrome. But if you look at different markets and then perhaps you split out desktop versus mobile, Safari, particularly in Europe, particularly where Adform themselves are very strong, say for instance in the Nordics, which is our heritage. It can be 50% on desktop alone and obviously higher on mobile. So we've been trying to find a solution for a long time, working with publishers for a long time on how do we get back that sort of 40 to 50% of the hidden internet. And in particular, when we see brands that we work with that are more aspirational, they tend to see their buyers come to an iOS device. And of course, they can track that, but they can't necessarily advertise on it. So an approach to using identities really allows them to tap back into that. And this is something that we've been developing with them over the past few years. What we've done perhaps as an industry is what we do best, which is try and make this confusing loomscape of lots of different first-party ID vendors. We're not in the business of bringing out yet another one. We've just rebuilt our platform to make it agnostic. So really, we see a multi-ID world as being the future. And what our solution allows us to do is essentially just kind of bring all of those together to be able to try and give a really good cross-device, cross-frequency approach to advertising. It's certainly not as effective as how it was with third-party cookies, but I would argue that it's probably not as intrusive as well. So that's certainly where we see it. And I think it's not a case of having now to wait for Google. We've been running these campaigns across Safari and Firefox in the UK and Europe for a couple of years now with some great success.
And I think the really interesting thing to me, I think your point that you alluded to, David, is that marketeers have options, that we're seeing an expanding universe of options, very different approaches. I feel like the focus now is perhaps shifting towards really unpacking the way these different options work, testing and learning what's right depending on your campaign objectives, your spend, your target audience, and then optimizing accordingly. Let's jump on and talk a bit about the next kind of exciting topic, which is the future of search. And I guess we've been talking about search. It's been an extraordinary transformational change to all of our lives and to the way that marketing and advertising really function. It attracts obviously billions of dollars of investment, but we're starting to see changes in that marketplace. We have some specialized vertical search products emerging, and perhaps and potentially most disruptively of all, of course, we have AI tools, not least of which are obviously the tools that Google is building into its search product. Retail media, as we spoke about earlier, presents other options as well. So, David, let's start with you. How do you see the search market developing? Are these new offerings creating real choice in the marketplace?
I think they are. I think we will see. I think we have the potential to see really significant change over the next 18 months, particularly with the generative AI integrations into search. I think, TikTok, Pinterest, they've all offered search-specific products. Amazon search is growing, but I don't think any of those have taken significant market away from Google. Interestingly, Google in their last Q3 results, they posted a 12% growth in search revenue. So they're able to continue to grow their search spend. But I think the biggest threat by far is Search GPT, Perplexity, and the possibility that people will turn to those platforms to get answers rather than just blue links. And Google's been pressured by Search GPT and Perplexity to push for these AI overviews within the Google search results. But I personally think search is undergoing the biggest change that we've ever seen or seen in the last 20 years, which is answers, rather than blue links. And I think it is a huge opportunity, challenge, but actually interesting. One of the biggest challenges for this is for Google, because search revenue which is all clicks, so pay-per-click, it's all clicks, is I think over 50% of Google's overall revenue and 75% of Google's advertising revenue. And there's this challenge for Google: how do they monetize these AI overviews effectively? So I think it's such a really interesting area and twist that we've got coming through as a result of these generative AI changes in search.
Ooh, I think David may have just frozen.
Oh, no, he's back. I've got him.
Oh, sorry, I think my internet froze there briefly for a moment. Apologies. It is a tremendously exciting time. And I think as a consumer of search, as a user of search, many times a day, that change to offer answers rather than just links is genuinely transformational, I think. Phil, give us your take.
Yeah, I mean, amazingly, I actually agree with David on this one. He's more knowledgeable than me on some of the Google AI products, but certainly agree when I've seen the likes of Microsoft using examples of how people search and saying, it used to be when people say you're making your search too complicated, you must keep it very short. And now you can almost be conversational in. Do you remember that restaurant that we went to a couple of years ago that was in, and it will help you find that element because it will pick up the context of what you're writing. But I think for me, the biggest kind of challenge to search is David's gone. John's gone. Is essentially with something like new channels like retail media, because I think that with retail media, you're much more looking at kind of, a kind of not a walled garden necessarily, but perhaps a brand garden, much of a closed loop ecosystem, where if I think about how I shop currently on Amazon, I will tend to go to Amazon and search for something now as much as I would go to Google and search for something, because I know if I can get it on Prime, I can get it the next day or whatever. So I think retail media is an area where Google needs to be concerned that it could really take over in terms of not stealing budgets from it. I think from what we see in retail media, most of the budgets tend to be new, which is also what makes it very exciting. But it could be an area where they see a drop off in people actually searching on search engines because they're doing it on the big retail media network that they trust and they know.
Apologies, my Wi-Fi and then Zoom gave out, but I'm back now and hoping it's
all right.
So again, I do think it's such an exciting and interesting time, isn't it? You can see how these new offerings and new technologies like AI are going to transform the experience. What does the future of search look like on the core Google product? So I know, David, when you and I spoke, you raised that interesting question about how do you monetize answers? Can you see search becoming a paid-for product in the future?
I think that Google will need to review what its core monetization of their search product is. Currently, it's paying per click. Really interestingly, Perplexity, which is a generative AI search engine, is monetizing their ad product, which they're going live with this week or next week, through impressions. It's a CPM buy. But maybe Google will move towards like the equivalent of a brand zone on Baidu in China, where similarly it's impression-based remuneration, or maybe even kind of thinking further down the line, maybe Google will connect consumers with brand AI agents to provide the answer to those questions that consumers are asking, and it will be a cost per agent engagement. I just think that the way that search is changing, it's less about consumers typing in a keyword and going through to a brand website. It's much more about the consumer getting the answer to that question directly within the page. And so Google has to, in my mind at least, it needs to monetize that. Otherwise, it's limited to monetize, product searches, flight searches, hotel searches. It's quite limiting for Google, I think.
Phil, what's your take on the future of search before we do our final question?
Yeah, I think, I never really thought about it like that from a user agent perspective. And I think that's fascinating, but also potentially a little scary for some people, and we have this weird relationship with advertising where things that we would do on a TV screen or a cinema screen feel natural, and yet things that we do sometimes online feel, I think, quite intrusive. And so I think it comes back to AI needing to have a little bit of guardrails and a little bit of kind of legislation surrounding it, because I think it's still a little bit of the Wild West from a global perspective. I think people are still trying to look at exactly how we manage to kind of cap this and manage it. And I think all of that will play a part in how the likes of Google are able to push the envelope when it comes to things like having it direct to user agents. Cost per user agent. I like it.
It would be a dramatically different model, but I mean, to me, what's fascinating is that a product which is so mass market and so widely used is still changing so quickly. This is not a mature space. It's a space which is continuing to evolve as new technologies and approaches come to market. A final question then, and I know one that lots of people are fascinated by at the moment. Short answers, please, as we're running a little tight on time. Google obviously has many different businesses. We touched upon some of them during the course of this conversation. Do you think it makes any difference to the market and to advertisers that they're all under the same roof? Phil, do you want to kick us off, and then David?
Yes.
It does.
No, I mean, look, it does. I think, which side of the fence I'm on this. I think it is a challenge when you have a PPC bid management tool and a search engine. You have a DSP that you have to use to buy on YouTube. When you have a publisher ad server that controls 95% of the market, right? I think it does. I think court cases are saying that Google have a monopoly with regards to this. I think the latest from the news from today was really the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. That the DOJ are saying that they want Google to potentially sell Chrome and unbundle Android, not the advertising element. So whether that will ever happen, I don't know. But clearly, kind of from a legal perspective, that's where people are thinking that it is a little bit of an unlevel playing field.
David, do you think it makes a difference to marketeers?
I do think it makes a difference. I mean, it makes a difference in terms of simplicity of activation. Like when an advertiser is on the Google stack, the ability to use Google's ad products in a straightforward way from an activation perspective, it does make a material difference. It's not to say that it won't be possible to do sophisticated activation in the future, but I think that Google has done a very good job of making it possible to target audiences in YouTube based on search intent that they've shown within Google search, using Google conversion pixels integrated in with Google Analytics. They have created a very efficient means of advertising. And I think one thing we do take for granted, we're used to working with big advertisers. Actually, there is a huge amount of small advertisers who invest, and the fact that those products are looped together does make it very easy for kind of simple setup and activation, which I do think in a more fragmented ecosystem would be more challenging for those smaller advertisers. So I think that's one thing to consider.
And I think that takes us full circle. It's the point you made at the beginning, that it's that challenge for regulators and consumers and marketeers, that there are both pros and cons, challenges and opportunities presented by some of these integrations. David and Phil, that's been fascinating and a super, super helpful sweep through some of the latest changes happening at Google. So thank you for spending the time to do that. A really interesting discussion. We are now moving on into our final discussion at our final International Knowledge Exchange of 2024. And when preparing our program, we thought it would be really interesting, possibly fun, possibly a little anxiety-inducing, to ask each of the participating organizations to give us some insights into what they expect to see in 2025. What kind of year do we think it'll be? What kind of trends and developments are we expecting to play out? So you'll be delighted to know that all of the bodies participating indeed took up this challenge, and we've now got 5 sets of insights coming your way to give you a flavour of what you might expect to see in the media and advertising space next year. We'll kick off. So we think 2025 is going to be one of the most exciting and consequential years in the history of the US measurement marketplace. Why is that? It's really about competition. So we have a set of very exciting new offerings gearing up to be fully launched next year. The WFA's Aquila CMM solution that Accenture and Canton Media and others are working to build, offerings from Hypermetrics and others are all due to come into the market, which will see a real uptick in the range and quality of measurement solutions available in the market to US buyers and sellers. The JIC is gearing up to fully launch its new streaming data service. Work on that has been progressing rapidly, and that will make available first-party data to certified measurement solutions providers, which will be a really interesting addition to their offerings. We expect to see usage of new currencies continue to accelerate. The VAB published a statement earlier this year suggesting that usage of the new currencies for national TV ad buys probably amounted to around $2 to $3 billion in 2024. We expect to see that more than double in 2025 through a mix of upfront commitments and ongoing trading. So further growth and development in that space. Another development in the US we're excited about is the growth of Kantar Media. They've made some incredibly exciting announcements about the new US team, many of them friends of CIMM who've stepped into senior roles at the new Kantar Media business. It'll be exciting to see what they come up with. And lastly, we expect to see further growth in CTV and streaming usage, which will again bring new measurement solutions into the marketplace. Finally, one little word of caution. We expect questions around the missing jigsaw pieces and data quality to become even more pressing. The good news is that we have more big data sets available in the market to build measurement solutions off, which is great. We know the future of measurement is some sort of fusion of panel plus big data. But there's a growing awareness that there is no perfect census level data in the market. All data has holes, gaps, and biases. We recently published a paper by industry experts Josh Chasen and Albert Lau that explores some of these issues and proposes solutions. We expect to see momentum growing, demand growing around these solutions. So a hugely consequential year next year, we believe, one in which we expect to see significant upticks in the range and quality of offerings available to consumers and improvements in quality. With that positive note, I'm now going to hand over to EACA for their view on 2025.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura and oversees membership into EACA. So EACA is a European Association of Communication Agencies, and we represent all agencies across Europe, so both corporate and national associations. So indeed, very briefly, by 2025, the way agencies measure media and advertising will be further transformed. It's all about precision, privacy, and sustainability. So very briefly, let's break it down. So first, cross-channel measurement. As you know, audiences are everywhere, so TV, digital, social, and so on. The future lies in unified tools that track how people engage across all these platforms. So having one dashboard that shows reach, engagement, and performance in real time, that's where agencies are headed. Holistic measurement that makes campaigns smarter and more efficient. Next, privacy-driven strategies. So it makes sense that with third-party cookies disappearing and regulations tightening, privacy isn't just a compliance issue, but a trust issue. So we will have to focus more on collecting first-party data ethically and using privacy-compliant tools to deliver relevant ads, and that's how agencies will build loyalty. And finally, the third point, purpose and sustainability. Clients do not just want to know how well their ads performed, they want to know their impact. Where is the campaigns inclusive? Did they align with cultural values? What the carbon footprint? Metrics for social and environmental impact will be absolutely key. Agencies need to show that they are creating campaigns that matter not just for the business, but to the world. So now here's the thing. Currently, these 3 points are not truly connected. So cross-channel measurement, privacy compliance, and purpose-driven metrics all exist in their own silos, and bringing them together into one cohesive, only one system will be one of the biggest challenges in 2025. Well, it was very brief, but the key points are here. Thank you. And thank you for this amazing session.
Thanks, Laura. You said a lot. It's a challenge. So moving on to EACA, I think afterwards. So EACA, for those of you who don't know, we represent the TV and the radio side from the ad sales side. So we decided to focus on one main prediction, because there's quite a lot, but the bottom line of this is collaboration. So the context is that in a industry where TV and radio's linear viewing and listening time are decreasing, none of you will be surprised in the fact that streaming is really the business that our members are looking into, which means that right now the TV and the radio industry is moving in the marketing funnel, where we used to be much more at the top of the funnel. We're very much now, with all our assets, active in all sides of the funnel, and this comes with a lot of challenges, obviously, and opportunities. So what our members are looking into now is a lot more automation. Accountability, obviously, still is very big on our priority list, and data-driven activation is very high on the discussions that our members are having with clients right now. So basically, all discussions that are moving into the outcomes-based side, understanding the brand's needs to adapt the campaigns much better, is really what our members are doing right now, which means that if we want that to happen at scale, given the global reality right now, we need more collaboration. So it's both a prediction, but also a call to action. We really believe the industry can only thrive through collaboration. And I just wanted to make sure to show 4 examples here of what is already happening in some of the markets. Lantern is in the UK on the audience measurement side, on the outcomes-based side. In the French market, a lot of collaboration and quite a lot of angles. You mentioned sustainability, Laure. By the way, it's happening on the French market as well, a lot. But retail media is one example we chose here. On the ad tech side, and everything that is really the streaming side, but also the ad tech stack side, it's happening as well. The German market is a good example of that. And here the Dutch market for the audio side, again, on audience measurement. So we're just very excited to see more collaboration happen next year. And that is frankly happening in all sides of our industry. So voilà, passing on to IAB, I think, for the rest.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Helen Mussard, and I'm the CMO at IAB Europe. Very happy to share some of our key predictions that reflect IAB Europe's analysis of where we believe significant shifts will happen. Please note this was not an easy task. As we've heard over the past hour and a half, the rise of AI, the focus of quality in media, and obviously the shift now of uncertainty on a global scale. These are 3 very high-level trends, and we look forward to providing much more depth in our 2025 work plan. So first up is cross-media measurement. We anticipate a major move towards the industry, hopefully adopting unified measurement frameworks, offering transparent, comparable metrics across both digital and traditional channels. As media consumption continues to fragment, advertisers and publishers are demanding solutions that bring coherence to their performance assessments. This has been a constant request over the many years, and it's definitely time it was actioned. So we're excited to see what projects like Origin will bring in 25, and we look forward to supporting the industry on its journey. Second up, we have to mention the post-cookie era. Great conversation just now. We've seen this year that we're entering a new phase for addressability, and in 2025, third-party cookie reliance is definitely going to be declining, and we're going to see the industry pivot even faster towards privacy-first targeting solutions. We predict that brands will increasingly rely on their first-party data, contextual advertising, identity frameworks that balance personalization with user privacy. Whilst there's been significant movements in 2024, I think next year is going to be the year that brands and agencies have finalized their strategies. From our own analysis, we've seen that the buy side is the one group that's maybe less prepared compared to other stakeholders. In a recent poll that we did, we noticed that 43% of advertisers agreed that they were prepared, compared to 79% of ad tech responders and 73% of agencies. So it's absolutely time that the industry comes together, works and shares solution, and helps each other in this new era of digital advertising. And then finally, from our own industry and investment studies, we're seeing retail media and connected TV are set to become even more dominant in 2025. We foresee a strong push for comprehensive standards and guidelines that will support growth in these spaces. Establishing consistent practices will be crucial for fostering trust and ensuring the scalability of these emerging channels. At IAB Europe, you've heard the work that we've been doing in retail media, and we look forward to working with industry stakeholders to look at new areas such as CTV. And we'd just like to thank everyone for today, because I think events like this will be crucial in 2025 to make sure that we all know what's going on closer together. So I'm going to pass over to Tom. or
Actually,
Matt.
Thank you very much, Helen. I'll be super brief. I'm pleased to say that I agree with all my colleagues who've spoken today. I'll start with John, actually. I agree that 2025 will be a big year for measurement in the US, as John says. I think it'll be a big year for measurement elsewhere as well, in the UK, as Helen says, potentially elsewhere as well. We certainly feel that data emerging from the origin prototype of WFA's Halo framework is going to be potentially a seismic event. We hope that the data that surfaces from this prototype will prove out how this approach can work to enable cross-media measurement. As John says, the debate is largely being had about whether big data and panel approaches can be used to conduct scaled measurement. We know that is the way forward, but it's going to be fascinating to see how Halo and other approaches can actually be adopted in Europe and scaled. And one of the points I took from this discussion today is that we are moving into a space where there is more interoperability, multi-ID approaches and expanding options. And I think that feels about right. So we'll see more of these approaches, cross-media measurement approaches such as Halo and others deployed. My final point is about AI, and we are beginning to see the appetite for more and more collaboration. My God, it's needed to ensure we have in place the right codes of conduct to govern this fascinating, but also sometimes scary space, as we heard in the earlier panel. So I would agree with my colleagues, really, everything that's been said. My major pieces are about collaboration, as they were with EGTA. We'll need more and more of that. And just to close us out, that's why this is such a fantastic event, the International Knowledge Exchange, because it is all about collaboration, collaborating with our partners across the trade ecosystem. I love doing this event. It's fascinating, and we're looking forward to many more of these in 2025 and beyond. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for participating with us today. I'm looking forward to more of these sessions in the new year. Thanks again. Bye-bye.